Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to the Conflict of Nick channel. I'm your host Nick, and today I'll be bringing to you the Support Basics video in the series explaining all units in the game of Conflict of Nations. Now, it has been a few days since my last upload, and I do apologize. Like I said in the last video, I was feeling pretty bad, and it got really bad. And I felt really ill for a few days, but I'm feeling much better, and so now I feel like I can record a video for you guys and get this out to you. Today we're going to go into the research tab and go into the third in little support icon here, and this is going to be a bit of a longer explanation because, as you see, there's a lot more units here and a lot of them have many unique features. So why don't we get started? The first support unit that we're going to be discussing is going to be the towed artillery. Now, the thing you want to know about these is that everybody at the start of a basic game gets one of these in their capital. Same with a fighter jet. So this towed artillery, it needs to not even have much explanation. It is a towed artillery piece. At level 1, it does 3.5 damage to infantry and 3 to armor. And in the Eastern Doctrine, basically this moves up to 3.5 because in the Eastern Doctrine, this unit will get, I believe, a 20% damage increase to armored targets. So the armored damage will be the same, I believe. This will require a level 2 army base to build and a level 1 arms industry. And some things about this to note is that with most artillery pieces, they will have some pretty relative debuffs and buffs in terrain. But one good thing about them, even though most people do not actually build these as artillery units in the game, they can airlift at level 1 and they have an attack range of 50. Now at max level they don't get too much better. They do 8.5 to infantry and 4 to armor, and that doesn't seem too bad. They can also air assault. But one of the things that they lack is proper range. They only get a range of 75, and the other two artillery units in the support tab can outrange this artillery piece. Now, the debuffs and buffs that this artillery will get is actually relatively simple. In Tundra, it will get an all-around negative 50% attack and defense bonus. You do not want to have them there. You do not want to have them in jungles. Minus 50% attack and minus 25% defense, and in forest, minus 50% attack. The only terrain where artillery will get a buff is in mountains, and it's very good there, and it will increase the damage by 25%. So this artillery is going to not do too much damage regardless of the level. It's got very small range compared to other artillery pieces, and at level 1 it's pretty useful in the early game because you're pounding away at infantry with low hit points. There's not many support units or aircraft in the battle yet, and it can help you in some situations in early game, but I would not really recommend this for a mid-game or late game setup. The second support unit we will be going over will be the mobile artillery piece. This is going to be the second artillery piece that we'll be talking about in the support units tab, and let's jump right into it. So right off the bat in level 1, we can see a few things. This artillery piece is going to require the same thing as a towed artillery piece, except you will need an armor base level 3 instead of level 2. This thing will be packing a punch to armor because this artillery piece in general, unlike towed artillery, is meant for anti-armor. So one thing you'll notice about towed artillery is that it was an anti-infantry artillery piece. This will be for shooting vehicles, tanks, etc., etc. So this will be doing more damage to armor pieces all in all. Right away you can see that this outranges towed artillery by a fairly decent amount. It gets 65 range at level 1, which isn't bad, but as you can see it cannot be ferried by aircraft. This thing is getting less debuffs than the towed artillery and is getting the same buff. It gets 25% attack bonus in mountains. It is getting minus 25% in forest and minus 25 all around in jungles. This is going to require supplies and also components to build, and so it's going to be a little bit costly, but they're overall not a terrible artillery unit. Um, at level 4, they cannot be ferried by jets either, and at max level, they finally can. So these are basically like MBTs if they were a support unit, or main battle tanks. Main battle tanks, like the mobile artillery, cannot be airlifted until level 3, which makes them highly immobile, and that's one of the downsides of them. Now, at max level, you're packing about 85 range for attack, and you're not getting too much, many more things after that. You're getting 5.5 infantry damage, and you're getting 8 to armor. So, one thing to note about these, though, is that they get extremely high hit points compared to other support units, and they're basically tanks, but they're just artillery. And one thing to note is that the best doctrine for this vehicle is going to be the European Union. It gets more infantry damage, I believe 5% more, and it gets, I believe, 20% more hit points. So instead of this Western Doctrine 35 hit points mobile artillery, the EU Doctrine is going to be packing over 40 hit points. So overall, this artillery is okay, it's decent, it can get outranged by other artillery pieces, but overall isn't a bad choice if you're facing an enemy with lots of armor. The next support unit we will be talking about, and possibly one of the best units in the game overall, and one of the most used by most players that know how to use them well, is going to be the multiple rocket launcher. Unlike the other artillery units in this game, the multiple rocket launcher only gets 5 levels compared to the others 6 or 7. Now, one thing we will notice is that right away, these things will require a level 4 army base, so basically we're moving up from 2 to 3 to 4. This will require a lot of electronics and supplies. Now, something you will also notice is that this is the highest starting attack range of any artillery unit in the game that you will have access to. It does overall even damage to soft and hard targets, 4.5 to infantry, 4 to armored, and 3 to ships. Now that's going to be something important we talk about. It can't be air ferried until level 4 or the second tech level. It gets the same debuffs and buffs as the mobile artillery piece, with 25% increase in mountains and debuffs in forests and jungles. Now, these are going to be one of the most important units anybody can research if they're going for a support or land-based setup, because one thing you'll notice is that at level 4, this thing will get 100 attack range. That's the highest possible attack range in the game for land-based targets, and this will be able to range evenly with cruisers that are level 3 or higher. They'll be able to outrange other artillery pieces and do overall insane damage. At level 4, like I said, they can be airlifted, and at level 5, these things are godly. They can do 7 to soft and armored, and 5.5 to ships. So, not only are these able to be counter, infantry, and armor, and not only do they get the most range, but they can also hit ships very, very hard. Especially if these are used right with hit and run tactics, and in mountains, these can pack over or around 80 damage. They're very expensive and they can cost a lot, so I recommend building these before you get to level 4 or 5 because the tech levels make them very expensive and costly. But to use these, you will want to use them, you will want to have them protected with lots of different types of anti-aircraft. A good stack for these would be multiple rocket launchers. You would want maybe 1 or 2 mobile AA, maybe 1 or 2 SAM launchers, and a mobile radar unit. There is currently no best doctrine for this unit that I know of, and all the doctrines get the same. Moving on to one of my personal favorites in the game, we're going to be moving to the mobile anti-air vehicle. Now, this vehicle is one of my favorites for quite a few reasons. At level 1, you can see they can't be air ferried or anything like that. They're pretty costly, but they're also somewhat cheap because you don't need a level 2 or 3 military base, only level 1 army base and a level 1 arms industry. This will cost around 1,000 supplies and around 1,350 components to build level 1. And the best doctrine for these units will be the European doctrine, which gets 20% more damage to helicopters. Now, why are these things so good, you ask? So at level 1, you can see they're all around actually fairly decent. They get 2.5 to infantry and 1 to armored. That doesn't seem like a lot, but these are anti-aircraft vehicles, and they can engage ground targets, and this is the only anti-air vehicle that can actually do so, and it acts as armor, which is actually really nice. It does 4 defense and attack to fixed-wing aircraft, aka jets, 4.5 to helicopters, in this case the EU would get higher, and 1 defense and attack to missiles. So overall, these things can do multiple roles and multiple things for you. They can attack all types of aircraft and missiles, and attack ground targets as well. These things are not getting any buffs anywhere, only debuffs. In tundra, jungles, and forests, they're getting an all-around minus 25% debuff, and in mountains, a minus 25% attack debuff. Now, at level 4, these things can be airlifted, which is really nice, and they get a range of 50 anti-aircraft range. At level 1, it was 25, and now it is moving up to 50, which makes it a lot better. And at max level, for other doctrines apart from the European doctrine, this thing is packing 5 soft target damage, 2 armor target damage, 7 jet damage, 9 helicopter damage, and 2 missile damage. With the EU doctrine, this helicopter damage is pumped up to 11, which is really good. They still have a range of 50, and they can air assault with helicopters. Now this is more useful of a feature than most would realize for these units, because not only can these be flown by helicopter to an emergency spot where aircraft are potentially attacking, but also these can act as emergency armor to stop an assault or buy time. They have 31 hit points and can do somewhat decent damage to ground targets. And they're one of my favorite units because of their all-around versatility against basically anything, and simple infantry mortar stack with a few of these on board is, I think, one of the most simple but also best stacks you could have in the game. Moving on to the second anti-aircraft unit of the support units, we have the most popular Mobile SAM Launcher. This is one of the most used units in the game by players in the support tab, because who doesn't love an anti-aircraft that is specifically made to target jets and missiles? At level 1, for the Western Doctrine, you will see that this thing does not do any ground damage, no helicopter damage, and that's something that many don't realize. We'll get to that in a moment. This thing will require a level 3 army base and a level 1 arms industry. They require supplies and electronics to build, and the best doctrine to get these in is the Eastern Doctrine, which gets 20% more aircraft damage, which is really nice. Now, these things get an anti-air range of 75, and they can hit fixed-wing aircraft and missiles. They can't target helicopters because they cannot hit low-flying aircraft, and something over mobile AA that they have is they actually have radar detection. They can detect fixed-wing aircraft. So at level 1, this thing is packing 8 attack damage to jets. It's just simply deadly, and you do not want to get caught by this, because if you get caught by this with more than 1, you're going to have a bad time if you're flying jets too close by. You're doing 2 missiles, defense, and attack, and overall it actually gets very little buffs or debuffs. The only debuff it gets is to defense in jungles, so overall this thing doesn't do bad basically anywhere. Now, when you get this thing to level 4, it can, as most units, be air ferried by jets. The anti-air range will be 100, and that is very good because it is so wide you can see so many aircraft, and you'll have a nice solid air protection for your units. Now, going to max level in the Western Doctrine, this thing is packing 11 jet damage and 5.5 missile damage, so this thing can act against missiles very, very effectively. Now, in the the Eastern Doctrine, this can be pumped up to 13, which is really good. Some things you'll notice about the SAM launcher at max level that we'll get to in a second is actually very, very good. At level 5, one level before this max level, you will be able to air assault with this thing, get it to locations you want to fast via helicopters, and overall you can also see fixed-wing aircraft signatures of low. Now this is basically you can see smaller aircraft or aircraft with a low radar signature. I'll go for radar signatures and detection probably in a video in the future. One of the most important things about SAM launchers at this level, however, at max level only, is that it can reveal stealth aircraft. Now how this works, like I said, is that it all depends on the view range. It's not about the radar range that reveals stealth. So this sight range of 25, if an aircraft that is stealth walks into this, it will be revealed to the SAM launcher. So you'll be able to see stealth fighters, stealth bombers, stealth strike fighters. And overall this thing is very good to have when you're dealing with a large air force, or overall just want to protect your ground units and support units. I recommend this. It's never bad to have, and overall is a very, very solid unit in my opinion. The last anti-aircraft unit that we have in the support tab is going to be one of the lesser known ones and probably lesser used. It is going to be the Theater Defense System. Now, the Theater Defense System is an interesting one, and little people use it. Well, very little people use it. Now, why is that? Well, probably because it's very expensive. This thing is the only ground unit that will require a level 5 army base to build, and it requires level 1 arms industry. It's going to require the standard supplies and electronics as for most support units. One thing you'll notice is that level 1, it gets 100 anti-air damage. This thing can engage fixed-wing aircraft and missiles, and just like SAM launchers, it cannot attack helicopters. This thing has radar detection as well for fixed-wing aircraft, which means that it can also detect missiles. This thing, however, is doing very little damage to aircraft because this is a purely anti-missile anti-aircraft. It's only doing 2 to jets and 12 to missiles. So one of these things can do 12 to missiles and 12 defense, which means if an ICBM level 1, which I believe has 22 HP, is coming for your city, and you have a theater defense in the middle of that city, combining the defense and attack, which I don't know if I've described how anti-aircraft works, but I probably will in another video, this adds up to 24, which will kill it. So one theater defense system can kill and save your city from a very expensive ICBM. Now, just like SAM launchers, it gets very little debuffs or buffs, and only is debuffed in the jungle for defense. One thing to note, however, about theater defense systems is that they are very, very, very slow. So use these very wisely and get them where you want them to go as soon as possible. At level 4, these things can be airlifted, which is very nice. They have an anti-air range of 125 and the same radar detection overall. They're packing more damage all around, but at max level, this is where they really shine. But not many people get to this because, as I said, it is so expensive and not many feel it is worth leveling them up this much. So, oh wait, this is the radar. Oops. I mean the THAAD. There we go. So, the THAAD system, this is packing 4 to fixed-wing aircraft and 16 to missiles. And it is getting to reveal stealth at the level before max level, which is this right here, stealth locating system. And it's doing 16 to missiles, and it's getting 150 attack range. So this is very wide. You'll see so many things very far, and you're gonna be basically impenetrable for missiles in your homeland or on front lines where you have this thing set up. Now, like I said, it's very expensive, but it's very solid to have in a very late game setup. Personally, this thing does well if you're going against somebody using very large missiles. And overall, it takes a while, but I would personally get these to level 2 only, because at level 2 it gets the 125 anti-air range and 13 missile defense and attack, which is very good, because if used correctly you can take down max level ICBMs, which have over 40 HP just with 2 of these in a defending city. The best doctrine for those, by the way, is going to be Western, because the Western gets some better research levels, so you're able to basically research the levels in this unit earlier than other doctrines. The last support unit, and one of the most important ones and unique ones at that, is personally one of my favorites, is going to be the mobile radar. Now, the mobile radar is so important because it purely gives you radar detection of all types of units. You can detect high ground units, which means you can detect ground vehicles and certain types of infantry. You can detect fixed-wing aircraft, and you can detect naval units, which means surface vessels. This thing doesn't do any damage apart from 0.5 to infantry or armor if it gets engaged in melee combat, but never get into melee combat with this thing. You want to keep this thing extremely safe, have it stacked with other support units and behind your lines so that you don't lose this, because it's critical to know what your opponents are doing so that you are not blind. This thing gets a radar range of 100, like I said, and is very cheap to build. It only requires level 2 army base and level 1 arms industry, and 600 supplies and some electronics, so not that bad. There's no debuffs or buffs to note, and this thing gets no best doctrine. Now, moving up, at level 3, or the second tech level, this thing can be airlifted, which is very nice because it can be pretty mobile pretty fast. The second level, before the max level, it allows you to detect stealth, and that stealth is very crucial because at that level, and this is the max level by the way, go away ad, you can detect ground units and aircraft that are stealth, which means in the view range of 25 or in mountains, which would be 40, you can detect special forces or jets. This thing can also scout the exact composition of an army and has a radar detection of 250, which is huge. It's overall still cheap and fun to use. It's very important to know what your enemies are doing, like I said, and overall is very solid to have on the battlefield. It's very important to have these stacked with artillery units especially, or just all around if you want to know what's happening around your homeland or on the front line. Guys, I hope you're enjoying these videos. It really means a lot to see how much positive feedback it's getting. I love that this is helping people, and I hope that you guys gain some knowledge from this, and even I can learn something that I probably didn't know, because I'm sure in the comments somebody will be able to tell me something that I forgot to mention or did not say correctly. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked it, dislike it if you hated it, leave a comment if you want to say something or if you have any questions or something you just want to tell me. Subscribe if you like the channel. If you want to see more content, guys, I hope you're enjoying this series, and I will explain helicopters and fighter jets in the next video. Peace out, guys, and I hope this helped people.